Hello, everyone. Welcome to Nuclei's podcast series, Digital DNA, where I speak with industry leaders to understand their perspective. We go back and look at their formative years and try and understand their worldview and learn from their experience. I'm your host, Ankur Joshi. I'm the founder and CEO of Nuclei. Nuclei is a global fintech firm working with 20 plus banks across Asia, and we develop multiple fintech products or solutions, which we integrate with various banking platforms. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Mr. Petr Klimes, who has been a leading marketer and digital banking executive over the couple of decades. Peter has a diverse international banking experience, and he has launched several industry-first initiatives at Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank as well as Citi Group. I was very fascinated with the way Peter looks at product development and overall digital product development within a bank. And that's also something we'll speak about during our conversation today. Peter, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thanks a lot for inviting me. I'm excited. Thank you.
Awesome, Peter. So, Peter, like we was conversing before we started recording, right? That a lot of times we have seen that leaders in the industry, their formative years were during their schooling, during their college years, and the value systems or the principles they develop about leadership were actually formed during those years. So let's go back to those years and understand, what were your formative years? Were there any key incidents, events, or value systems or principles which were developed during those years in the first 20 years of your life, which still remain true and are essentially a guiding principle in the way you develop products or lead teams or which have guided you through your journey? Please.
So I grew up I come from the Czech Republic, and I grew up behind the Iron Curtain, actually. And so until I was 20, I lived in a socialist bloc, and I couldn't travel. The first time I traveled outside the country was when I was 15. But I only could go to the eastern part of Europe because we couldn't travel to the West. I'm a third child of 5 children, and so I've got 2 brothers and 3 brothers, 1 sister, and which is extremely unique in the country that I come from. I grew up in a family that is a Catholic family in a country that is fairly atheist. So I was one of the few kids in the in the area that actually went to a religious education, and so that was very. I never really fit in. I was always kind of different because our family was different. But I'm super grateful for that, and I'm super grateful for having had such parents. Luckily they're still alive, and them, showing me what courage is, and that one should believe in something that is bigger than himself or herself. So I think that's where it started, and then later on, when I witnessed the what's called the Velvet Revolution. I was 20 or 19 then, and so I saw the fall of communism, and I was part of the student movement that helped overthrow the the tyranny of the communist government. So that was a really interesting and formative experience. And I always wanted to go west. I never went anywhere. I couldn't. We were not allowed to travel, especially us being from a not very favorite family in the old system. So soon after the 1989, when the revolution came, I spoke no English. I only spoke a little bit of German. Of course, I spoke Russian, and of course, I spoke Czech. So and then I decided I wanted to go and study in the U.S. So in half a year, in 6 months, I was able to learn the English, and and found an opportunity in the U.S. to study there for a year and learn English, and was exposed to the world. I guess that's where my international experience started, and I became very fascinated with the world and with the cultures. So when I came back from the US and I was looking for a job, I was naturally attracted to international companies where I could continue to be exposed to people from other countries, and so I started with Citibank. So those were my formative years, and this is what I do.
It's very interesting because when you look at kind of opening up to the world after maybe 18, 19, 20 years, right? Your worldview is completely flipped, right? Uh, Things which you believed in, things which you were not exposed to at all, uh, suddenly your even the belief system changes. So were there certain beliefs which you had as a 19-year-old kid, uh, and in the next couple of years, which completely flipped and maybe, kind of gave you that chip on the shoulder? So the fact that you did not speak English till you were 19 or 20, right? I can relate with that because till about 21, my English was also very, very poor, right? And I come from a very small town in the center of India, but my English was very, very poor, and I carried that insecurity complex for many, many years, and that kind of acted as a chip on my shoulder that because even if my English is poor, I would compensate for it through something else by working hard or gaining more knowledge, etc. Like, was that something because coming from a country which was communist for till you were 20, and then suddenly moving into a regime which was very, very different, what were some of the thoughts or belief systems which completely changed for you?
I think when I was growing up, we were a family that we didn't have much money because my dad, although he was highly qualified, because of the regime, he couldn't get the job that he would have deserved. He only got it after the revolution. So we always, and family of 5 children, we didn't have much money. So there was not much left at the end of the month. And I sometimes felt we were, not as respected in the community that I think we should have been. So I guess one of my latent drivers was, to prove that somebody from this family can do something great, and somebody that, and make my parents proud. So that was, looking back, that was definitely a driver. Of course, the other thing was curiosity. So curiosity is something that somehow my parents kind of built in us. So they nourished this. So we would, spend evenings and days, discussing, of course, the politics, but also, the nature, and I was very fascinated by astronomy and Big Bang and black holes and all that stuff. To this day, I'm fascinated by that stuff. So curiosity was also something that I think is still a very much a part of who I am, and something I'm very grateful for, because when somebody tells me something that I find maybe not very very relevant but just interesting, and I will remember it. So you will tell me about your the history of your state and of your town, and I will remember it because I can listen to the story and I can relate to the person that is saying it with a conviction and with a passion, and that makes the story not just interesting to hear, but very memorable. And I guess maybe I'm jumping ahead. That kind of was a preview to my career as a marketeer, which I see marketing as a storytelling challenge, a storytelling profession. And if you can tell your story with a passion and conviction, then it becomes a story that is remembered, and that's the holy grail of marketing, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going to go there, because your curious brain, your innate curiosity was something which was very evident when we met the first time back in Dubai, right? Uh, and we connected over not just when we were discussing about Amwali, but we were also discussing our backgrounds, and that's when I also realized that you were well read. You read a lot of books, and you had that innate curiosity. Your world view and the way you looked at things was very, very different. And I'm sure that would have played a very big part in terms of how you led teams, or what that could have played a very big part in you taking up marketing as a role, right? As you mentioned, that storytelling and telling it with a passion became a very big part of you. So, was getting into marketing a natural fit? It just flowed, or was it a very, very conscious choice that that was a skill set that you wanted to develop?
I started in banking in a corporate bank because back then there was no retail banking in Citibank in the Czech Republic. So I started in corporate banking, but I never really did like the real banking stuff. So I did product development, product management. I did a little bit of sales. I did quality management, like process design. We did Six Sigma quality, a program, the one from Motorola, which I loved, to this day. I thought it was, again, one of my formative experiences. And but I never really wanted to do banking. I just ended up in banking because it was an American company that opened in Prague. I never wanted to be a banker. So I never really was a banker. So I was kind of a foreign element in banking, and I enjoyed it. And I always wanted to kind of move around, and I did move around. And then when the retail bank started, and when the SME bank started, I immediately started to move towards that direction. Although it was more of a lateral move than going up, but I just knew I wanted to be in that space. So so I first moved into SME banking, and then I moved into retail banking and retail marketing, and that's I felt I was born for this. This is my space. This is where I can really use my creativity and curiosity, and those were extremely rewarding moments of my career.
You've been called one of the top marketers for many years now. I think you were ranked in top 50 marketers across the region. Maybe one of only couple of people who are from the banking industry, right? Uh, from your perspective, what sets you apart? Like, what makes you a very, very good marketer? One, and two, for budding marketers across industries, and maybe specifically from a banking industry, right? For marketing teams of various banks, what are the thumb rules you would recommend for them if they
I
have
think
to?
I think I was very lucky, and when I moved to ADIB, Abu Dhabi Islamic Bank, I was challenged with coming up with a new kind of an ethos for the brand, and I completely fell in love with that project because it resonated with not just it wasn't just intellectually interesting, but it was also spiritually interesting. Me coming from a religious background and being accepted in a Islamic bank, was very interesting, and I felt that that I could actually make a difference. I could tell the story of Islamic banking in a way that resonates well with the West, and can kind of improve the image of Islamic banking, which was tarnished by terrorism and all that stuff. And I met phenomenal Muslims and I really great people, and I really like Islamic banking. I'm still a huge believer in the idea of Islamic banking, because that's not necessarily about religion. It's more about ethics, and ethics is what connects all the people. So the challenge we got was, can Islamic banking be attractive to non-Muslims? Okay, and as a marketeer or as a a strategic kind of a brand builder, it's a dream come true, right? As a challenge, right? You absolutely, love that project. So so we went and we studied whether Islamic banking can be attractive to others, and we found that the ethical element of it was something that was universally accepted, and we built platforms to kind of prove that this was the point, that this was really true. We built something called Ethica, which was a ethical finance ethical finance initiatives, basically a global award for ethical finance initiatives. And we were rewarding people that used money to do good. And interestingly, most of them actually came from the Islamic world, which I thought was very interesting. But it was open to everybody. So we were able to prove that the ethics of Islamic banking are inspiring, and they can be attractive to everybody, and they basically define what a good banking is. So that's where the slogan, banking as it should be, came from. It actually didn't come from Muslims. It was from a focus group where we did a focus group with non-Muslims, and we explained to them what the banking that we are trying to build, what it does, without calling it Islamic. And they said, yeah, we like this. This is kind of the banking as it should be. And we were like, okay, we'll use that.
That is interesting. No. So this is a very interesting angle to this, that can Islamic banks target non-Muslims and succeed there? If you can share some of those success stories or some of the products that you built, and what attracted customers specifically to ADIB, if you can shed some light on that or give us some examples, that would be great.
Yeah, I think Islamic banks have two fundamental, I guess, ethical dilemmas that they have to solve for. One is, am I going to use Islam as a marketing tool, which I think is wrong, or should I use what Islam teaches me as my marketing tool, which I think is right? So if you are saying and if you want to be a good bank and really be on the side of the customers and be transparent and really do what's good for the customer, then you will succeed. But if you are going to use Islamic banking as a marketing to say, come to Islamic banking and you are going to do the right thing religiously, and I'm basically making money on Islam and I'm almost like abusing beliefs of people, that to me is wrong. So I think in ADIB, what made that brand really almost legendary is because we strictly never said, come to us, we are Islamic. We said, come to us, we are a good bank, and we will prove it to you. So we came up with the term Sharia inspired as opposed to Sharia compliant. So Sharia inspired is basically what Sharia makes you do. What are the good things like, for example, financial education is not something we have to do. You can be a Sharia compliant bank and don't do financial education, right? But you cannot be a Sharia inspired bank and not do financial education, right? So we for example, we looked at the idea of transparency. So transparency is one of the key principles of Islamic banking. But now, what is transparency? Is transparency a disclosing all your terms and conditions on 50 pages of paper, which I believe it is not? Or is transparency actually trying to help people make the right choices and giving them the information and the insights that they need to be smart with their money? So we chose the latter, and this is where our money smart movement kind of was born from. And to this day, I believe ADIB has the best financial education programs in the region, and I'm very proud of that. And I think it really stems from our belief that we should do the right thing for the customer.
Yeah. One of the success stories that we have discussed, specifically from a financial education perspective, was Amwali, right? Which you launched with ADIB. Can you give us some background why the decision to come up with Amwali in the first place? How did you develop it? What were the key milestones? Give us a few examples in terms of your experience while building Amwali.
Yeah. So we try to explain Amwali to people, and it's not always easy because bankers, unfortunately, have a very short-term view of the world, right? So um, but actually, Islamic banking is a long-term view, takes a very long-term view. So it's kind of a stable and predictable growth. That's, Islamic banking from a growth perspective is fairly boring, right? But that's what you want as a long-term investor. Um, and the one way to do it is to make sure that you make the future as predictable as possible. So you can focus on bringing customers to the bank when they are adults, and that's fine. That's what you have to do. Or why don't you grow your own customers? Why don't you nurture your own customers? Why don't you build your own customers? And that's the idea of Amwali. We came up with this children banking concept, and children banking has been around for a while, and it's been around for in many parts of the world, and there are some really successful stories, and we definitely looked at those and learned from them. But ours was slightly different. So the children banking propositions in the West are typically not done by banks. They are done by children banking apps, or they are done by banks, but slightly differently. They are like a fee-based programs. For us, it was a way to power the future of ADIB. Was to bring kids that are 12 years old and engage them, give them financial education, give them tools, teach them how to be responsible with money, and then gradually turn them into customers. We found that the kids that grow up with us as children and having our account, when we offer them adult banking, 70 to 80% of them would say yes. So that's a phenomenal conversion rate. So, and makes it very predictable. When you bring a child, you make, I don't know, 50 dirhams, whatever, $10, $12 per year if you are lucky on that account. So it's not very interesting for a bank, right? But if you kind of take a net present value of that relationship, going 10 years into the future, it becomes extremely interesting, right? Because then acquisition cost is cheaper and so on. You just have to have the corporate patience, to do that. And also you have to do it in a way that really fits your brand. So for us, it wasn't to teach them how to, use credit cards or how to, borrow money. It was about how to save, how to be smart with money. We even taught them, that charity is important. We taught them the importance of family. So we actually we built it in such a way that the kids were still connected to their parents, so the parents could actually use the tool to instill some good financial habits in the children. So yeah, so it was fun, and we had a fantastic team of people that kind of fell in love with the vision, and we built that completely in-house. In like 6 months we built that product, launched it, and it was very successful. And we built it with kids. So we had a founders club. We had kids that we hired basically, or attracted, to be a part of a founders club. They didn't design it, we designed it, but we used them as a sounding board, kind of to check some of our ideas. And some of our early ideas were clearly wrong. They said no. They're like, for some of the initial designs were, on the communication side, were very, were more into the gaming, or they were too childish, and they were like, no, we don't want any of this. You are a bank, okay, and we want to bank because we want to feel like adults, okay. So give us a products that make us feel like adults. So we completely changed the designs and so on. I guess one of the key things in marketing is humility. You have to be prepared to change your opinion, because we are so very opinionated, right? So I love my opinions, I love my view, but I have to be prepared to be challenged, because otherwise I can make a really costly mistakes for the bank.
So I remember having this conversation with you when, this insight that kids don't want to be treated like kids. They actually want to be treated like adults, and give them that respect, and automatically they will respond to your product, right? So that was very interesting insight. Thanks, Peter. Thanks for sharing that, your journey with Amwali. Um, Over the course of the last couple of decades, right? More than a decade, more than 2 decades. Uh, how has, I mean, and coming from a society which was behind the Iron Curtain, right? So, how has the definition of success changed for you? Not just from a marketing perspective, but for you personally, how has the definition of success changed?
Uh, it's a good question. I think for me, success is going home and feel good about what I do. At certain point of my life, it was kind of the glory that was associated with my title and with my the I don't know, peer recognition, and you mentioned this, me being included on some list of marketeers, and that made me very happy, and that of course is probably a sign of success. But my favorite um, Christian thinker, Richard Rohr, wrote in one of his books um, that it is very important for our life and for our happiness not to take our titles too seriously, and do not let our titles to become part of our identity, because then we will forget who we are, and we will chase the wrong things. So I hoped I was, and I read this at the right time, was just before I lost the title, um, and I was very grateful for that, because then I was able to let it go. It was like, this is not me. It's just a title. Somebody else will sit in that office. Somebody else will have that title. That's fine. But I'm not leaving my heart behind. I'm just leaving this office and this title with a sense of immense gratitude, um, and and I'm that was a success in a way, and I was able to grow people, in my team, and I was really honored and privileged to work with phenomenal people in my team, and my team, and it was very unique in the bank. My direct reports have been with me for 12 years, same team. um, and and it was not an easy relationship. There was a lot of storming, forming, in the beginning, but then we kind of worked together extremely well. We knew our um, strengths and weaknesses, and we could kind of complement each other. We could learn from each other. Um, so, and I learned a lot from my people. I think maybe, I hope they learned something from me, but I certainly learned a lot from them. So I had for example, a head of events, and she was phenomenal. I mean, everything I know about events, I know from her. A lot about digital marketing I know from Osama. A lot, on brand marketing I know from, and social media I know from Inas. So I guess, leader doesn't need to know everything. Um, I think it's important that we can step back and be grateful for the people that work with us, because they can teach us a lot. And I learn a lot from my children, because they know a lot about the world that's there, because that's being shaped for them. It's not necessarily being shaped for me. So they teach me how to use a lot of this stuff. Here. I'm very grateful for that as well.
Humility, I mean, that's something that's a vibe which you give off. That's the first impression which I also had of you when you first met. That you came off as a very humble person, and you are a humble person. Having a team stuck with you for so many years, that's obviously a reflection of your leadership skills as well, right? Uh, for your team or someone who is at the same level early years in their banking industry, what advice would you give to them, uh, if they have to become, as successful as you, or follow the path which you did?
I think it's passion is a word that's overused and it's widely misunderstood. But passion is something that you actually cannot get. It's very difficult to get, but it's something you can lose. But it's something that you can move mountains, right? Because it's something that carries your beliefs and it's very close to kind of stems from your identity. So basically, do things that you believe in, do things that make sense to you. Be nice to people. I know this sounds strange and very simple, but a lot of people will teach you kind of a Machiavellian, worldview that you have to be smart, who to be nice to, who not to be nice to, which strings to pull, and so on. And I think that's stupid. I think the best idea is to be nice to everybody. If one of them turns out to be kind of a hidden CEO and so on, and some of them turns out to be a janitor, it doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you have been nice to people, and it will work for you. That has certainly worked for me. And enjoy learning from people. There's everybody that you can learn from. There are a lot of people you will disagree with. You will always find something that they can teach you.
Absolutely. Peter, thank you so much. This was a very interesting and insightful conversation. Thank you once again for coming onto the podcast, and I look forward to meeting you very soon.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I enjoyed it a lot.
Have a good time in Doha. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.